Unit 1, Opposites and Absolute Value. Let's talk about opposites. Opposites are a positive and a negative number. So a positive and a negative number together that are the same distance from 0. So for example, if we look at 3, the opposite of 3 is negative 3. Because negative 3 is 1, 2, 3 spaces from 0, and 3 is 1, 2, 3 spaces from 0. So 3 and negative 3 are opposites. Let's look at 7. The opposite of 7 is negative 7 because they are the same distance from 0. Negative 7 is 7 spaces from 0, and 7 is 7 spaces from 0. Let's take a look at some more examples. The opposite of 3 is negative 3, because 3 and negative 3 are both 3 spaces from 0. The opposite of negative 3 then is positive 3. The opposite of negative 10 is positive 10. So you see the opposite, if a number is positive, the opposite is negative. And if a number is negative, the opposite is positive. Now let's talk about absolute value. Absolute value is different because it is just the number of spaces from 0. So the absolute value is just one number because we're counting how many spaces is that number from 0. Now, when we talk about absolute value, it is always positive, always. Let's take a look at some examples. The lines around this 3 are the lines we use, the vertical lines we use for absolute value. So we read this as the absolute value of 3. We're asking ourselves, how many spaces is 3 from 0? Well, it's 3 spaces from 0. So now let's take a look at negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3 because it is 3 spaces from 0. Let's take a look at this one. The absolute value of negative 99 is 99 because it is 99 spaces from 0. The absolute value of 27 is 27 because it is 27 spaces from 0. The absolute value of negative 16 is 16 because it's 16 spaces from 0. Now what about the absolute value of 0? How many spaces from 0 is 0? Well, 0. Now let's give you a challenge. Let's bring absolute value and greater than and less than together. So let's take a look at this number sentence here. It reads, the absolute value of negative 3 is blank than 0. Well, if you're thinking about negative 3 and 0, you might be thinking negative 3 is less than 0. But that is not what this sentence says. It says the absolute value of negative 3. Ask yourself, what is the absolute value of negative 3? Well, it's 3. So now, is 3 greater than or less than 0? We know that 3 is greater than 0. So the absolute value of negative 3 is greater than 0.